My name is Pawel Czech, um, and I will speak today shortly about the basics of developing strategies for growing startups and enterprises in general. So, just a little bit of my background very shortly. So, I have a long-lasting background in business development, in building strategies for creating revenue, new revenue, specifically in areas of the education industry, the HR industry, the biotech industry, and the artificial intelligence industry. And I'll be taking you today through the very, very basic components of building these strategies. I think we can start with a few quotes. The first one is from Matthias, the co-founder of NewNative, founder of NextGrid and Deep Learning Labs. And it's very clear that in the next few years, there will be businesses that implement artificial intelligence and business that don't exist anymore. Now, this creates a tremendous shift in the global economy, and it allows you to create concepts, companies, and structures that can really excel. So the other one is from me, which is to walk fast, don't talk to strangers, and invest in AI. And invest in AI means invest your time in artificial intelligence, your knowledge, what do you learn, where do you create value. And I strongly believe that right now the knowledge is out there, and you can create value for yourself and for others by simply learning, moving fast, not talking to people that don't understand artificial intelligence, and ideally investing in yourself and in creating value. So when talking about what is value, right? What is the value of a company, and how does a company create value? It's nice to think of it as an iceberg, right? So there are things that are instantly visible, and these are the things that are then hidden underneath. So the total iceberg, is the total iceberg. The big iceberg is the total addressable market. So your entire revenue opportunity, and you want the iceberg to be as big as possible. You want the iceberg to be massive, right? The bigger the iceberg, the higher the probability you're going to sink the Titanic, hit the jackpot, as they say. So if you imagine a product or a service that AI can fulfill, that you can develop using the tools that you'll be accessing today and tomorrow, and think about what is the total market it addresses. Ideally, you want to address the whole of human population, right? You want to say, my product, my service can help every single human on the planet. But that's very hard to do and hard to reach all of those people. So you also know that not everybody will be able to use your service. Like if your service is based on access to a computer or to a phone, and there are people, let's say, that don't have access to a computer or a phone on an internet connection, then they cannot be reached by your service. So that creates a serviceable market, serviceable addressable market, so SAM. And this is the population that can actually access your service when you release it. And the obtainable market share, so the serviceable obtainable market, is the realistic share of the market that you want to capture. And on this realistic share, you can actually put a timeline on it. Yeah, you can say that in year one, I will reach X% of the serviceable market. Then I will reach in the second year another X of the serviceable market. So it sounds funny because it's tam, sum, sum, but it's actually very important. So this is an example, right? So a simple example how we differentiate between these. So when you have the total addressable market of $600 billion, yeah, and then you have the serviceable market that is available. It's 10% of the total market, so 60 billion. And then you have the obtainable market. So here you want to focus on the number of users that you're going to have, or the number of enterprises that you're going to have, and then you can basically say, okay, I am able to obtain 800 million people within 5 years, 10 years. And you can see that the progression of adoption of different products is accelerated dramatically. So we know that TVs took multiple years to reach an audience of 100 million people, and then the internet cut that time dramatically. Then the smartphone. And so each new technology, if the technology is really helping people, it's really solving a specific issue that people have. Each new technology introduced into serviceable obtainable markets, the adoption of that technology dramatically increases and or accelerates. And we can talk about that during the next 2 days in detail. So once you understand what is the market that you want to address, you are looking for something that's called product market fit. And this is where most companies will fail, because they tend to scale or tend to want to go into the market before they achieve a product market fit. And there are very specific reasons for this. So the first question that is really good to write down, yeah? And the first question that you really need to answer is, who is the good customer, right? So for my service, for my product, who is a good customer? Not who are all the possible customers. That's not the point here. The point here is to narrow it down even further into who will be good for me and who I will be good for. And the easiest, the simplest way to think about it is that there's two types of buyers. There's a transactional buyer and a relationship buyer. So a transactional buyer is a buyer that you can transact with in a very short time, in a very convenient way. And this has some consequences. And a relationship buyer is a buyer that you need to build a relationship with. You need to understand their needs. You need to understand what is their cycle of making decisions, and the timeline of interaction is much longer. So the transactional buyer usually invests small amounts, yeah. So they don't. It's not a big amount that they're going to be putting in. And depending on the market, whether you're talking B2C, these amounts are very small, usually between $5 and $10, based on, let's say, in-app purchases or app purchases. Or in retail, we're talking about, again, a few dollars in and out. And switching between one type of service and another type of service is very low cost, because you just delete the app, you take another app in, it doesn't cost you that much. And they are buying the product based on a calculation in their head that is instant, which is, there's a price, there's a result, I match these two, is it worth to spend that money? This means that overall you want to coordinate the sales process as little as possible. Yeah, you want the decisions to be instant. You need the decisions to be basically things that people don't think about, right? So that's a transactional buyer, and we call that a spot market. So on the spot decisions, it's easy to think about it like that. And then we have relationship buyers. So these buyers think about the purchase in a much longer time horizon. They spend a lot more money, so they invest their time, their effort, their cash in a much more specialized procedure or an asset or a service or a product. And for them, once you get these customers in, the cost for them to switch services is much higher. So they are not only buying the product, but they actually are buying the relationship and the promise of high quality partnership and a high quality organization. And coordinating that process is a major sales effort, right? And we'll talk about this in detail in a second. Now, once you understand who's a good customer, you need to also understand that this creates consequences. And this creates consequences in the way you manage opportunities, in the way you manage relationships with your potential customers. And it's not easy, right? So there's the potential to have tremendous success, and there's the potential to fail. And it has to be very clearly said that failure, if you mismanage this process, failure is a huge risk that you're facing. So if you have a strategic buyer, a solutions buyer, you are building a relationship sales around program and resources, and you need to build relationship opportunities. So relationship opportunities mean that the interaction is much more on a personal level, and that you have to build the relationship. And so if your product requires large implementation, it requires understanding of the customer, it requires deep knowledge of processes and products on the customer side, and then you cannot expect to sell it instantly. You cannot just put it on the internet and expect people to click yes, buy. You need to build those relationships. And relationship opportunities are simply bigger. The amount needs to be bigger because the time and effort you're going to spend on building these relationships is significant. So this also means that you cannot create many, because you are a small team usually in the beginning. Let's say the founder or the two founders or co-founders of a business, they need to manage the sales process on their own. They cannot really manage a company, product, coding, development, marketing, and sales at the same time. So they focus on one or two big opportunities, and that creates a relationship success. A transactional success is when you do put your product out there in an instant buy option, and you don't spend time on talking with your customers. You don't spend time on really addressing their issues, their concerns, because you know that they will buy because the price versus the performance of the product is appealing. And this is where you test a lot. You test whether, okay, what type of customer will buy it? What is the price point that they will buy it at? Where will they buy it? And you create transactional opportunities. You don't spend time of the sales process, but then when the sales process starts, you don't spend time on each individual sales. Now, that creates success. Now, what creates failure is when you have a pricey product or high value product that requires a lot of decision making, a lot of procedures internally, for a buyer to make a decision, and you sell that product on a transactional way. So you say, okay, it's $100,000 to subscribe to my product, and you just need to give me your credit card. So that's a bit abstract, absurd, but that's how a lot of companies think. They would say, okay, there's a lot of corporations in the world, and all of them will want to buy my product, so I should talk to all of them. That's not the correct way to do it. You have to pick the customers if you have a relationship product and make sure that they are super successful. So then it means that you need to pick bigger opportunities, bigger transactions. And if you don't do that, if you pick small opportunities, small transactions, small deals that have and you try to sell it like that, then you're bound for failure. And the same with transactions. If you have a very small app or an app that does big things but it doesn't cost that much, or a service that does big things but doesn't cost that much, and it's very instant. The service is very instant, the benefit is instant, and you try to onboard huge companies, you try to create huge sales opportunities for that small element, then you are bound for failure as well, because these relationship buyers will not make decisions in that way. Yeah, their individual employees might want to use something, and that's a strategy, separate strategy, but the organization as a whole will not buy such a solution because simply that solution isn't fit specifically for them, and they want something that is specifically fit for them. So responding to an opportunity is not binary. It's not as simply yes or no. So I don't want everybody to think that it is, black and white. It's shades of gray, if you wish. And you need to analyze the whole spectrum of these opportunities before you decide how to respond. So you need to measure, you need to gather information, and you need to implement performance-based systems. So if you are not measuring, the time cycle of a connection, and you're not gathering information about the parameters of a transactional buyer or the parameters of a relationship buyer, you cannot really determine whether your effort is successful or unsuccessful. Internally, this is very important, that when you then develop a startup or you're working in a big company, resources, so people, computing time, coding time, these resources must be aligned to the opportunities. So if you put all of your resources in creating a transactional product, but then you take all of your activities and direct them to a big single purchase by a corporate, then you have you don't achieve product market fit, you achieve failure. And it's, again, a simplification, but in most product cycles, when you look at product features, the further you are from a transaction, instant transaction, the closer you are to a solution. So a solution means that it has specific advantages and disadvantages. So if you're doing transactional sales, the product development is basically creating new features. So you add a feature that creates an easier transaction. It creates a more appealing price versus performance metric. Now, then you start adding APIs, technical add-ons. Then you start adding different features that you can do in-app purchases, or you have specific technical add-ons that require additional payment. Then you're moving closer to a solution. And then you basically go into a custom solution. So I will develop something for you, right? I will use AI, I will use my expertise, I will use my resources and my activities to create a solution for you. And it ends with a completely new business model. Yeah, so you gravitate, if you take that road, you go from something very simple into creating a totally new business model. And if you don't have internally aligned resources for this transition, then again, there's a big chance of failure. So this slide is a little bit more complex, but it's actually a very straightforward way to determine whether you have product market fit. So customer value means the size of your transaction, and the sales strategy means the amount of time you spent with as one sale transaction. So the sales transactions go from low touch through medium touch through high touch, and customer value can range from very small to small and medium to very big. So if you want to have a lot of customers that have small and medium transaction value, you need to have a large number of low price deals. This means that you need to have automated sales, and you need to sell based on a platform approach or an app approach. So hopefully this makes sense to you, because this is the green sector. This is the sector you want to be in. This is the sector that allows you to achieve success. So again, you want to spend as little time as possible with each customer, ideally fully automate the sales process, and achieve a very large number of transactions. And then you can afford to have a small transaction value. So the other spectrum is you have a large transaction value. So you have the Fortune 100, the Fortune 500 companies, but you will spend a lot of time. So you'll have a lot of sales effort, a lot of solution management, right? So it's high touch. It's not only sales, it's also creating documentation, it's creating dedicated business models, it's creating dedicated technical add-ons, as we discussed, right? And for this to work, you need to have a small number of high price deals, and you need to customize your product, and you really need to build a relationship with your customer. So this green area, very small and low touch, are your ideal transactional customers. And this green area, so very big value and a lot of effort, are your relationship customers. Now, what's very easy to understand here are the red area, right? So you don't go there from day one. You know that you cannot go there. So having a very small transaction value and a high touch. Yeah, so a lot of effort for very small transactions means this will never be scalable. And a very big transaction value, but you're trying to approach it with a very transactional approach, simply doesn't work. Yeah, so it simply doesn't work. No big customer, no big transaction value can be generated based on very low effort in sales. And then we have the green area, the yellow area, which is the uneasy middle. And the uneasy middle is where companies go to die. So here we know it doesn't work. Here we know it doesn't work. Here we know it does work. And here we know it does work. In the uneasy middle, you are going back and forth. You're thinking, okay, maybe I will find a bunch of smaller customers and I'll do a little bit of service for them and they'll pay me a little bit more and so on. So these are typical service companies. These are typical service companies that try to perform or find their niche in a market that is not big, not small, and kind of try to build the relationship, but can't really spend much time on it. And these are not scalable companies, right? So if you're doing code, if you're doing software, if you're creating a product that is meant to be scalable, you don't want to be here. And so once you achieve product market fit, then you develop your sales strategy, right? So here we won't go into a lot of details, but sales strategies at the very basic level, obviously there's much more complexity to it. Range from e-commerce through direct sales to retail, indirect sales, and component sales. So your company, your startup wants to reach the customer, right? The customer, yeah. So the customer sends you money, you send the customer products and services. Straightforward. The question is how? So in e-commerce, it's direct. Your startup sends the product or service to the customer, and the customer directly sends you money. Super easy, super straightforward. The question is, can you build a relationship with a customer if you are selling directly to them online via an e-commerce solution? So I think everybody can answer that question on their own. But in general, if you're selling something just purely online, selling, I'm not talking about providing the way they access it. I'm just talking about the way that you collect their purchase order. If you want to do it completely online, then you're most likely not going to be building a relationship opportunity. You are building a transaction opportunity. Yeah. So this determines how you align your resources and activities and what type of size of transaction you are proposing and to which type of customer and how much effort, right? So e-commerce in general is low touch, small value. Direct selling. So this is where you introduce sales representatives. And in startups, it's most cases, it's the founders who are sales reps. And you want to build a relationship. So here it means you cannot really build it with a large number of customers. But then if you want to scale, you need to have a lot of sales representatives. So you need to hire a lot of salespeople, most likely regional salespeople, then in each region, then in each country. And then you end up with a huge sales organization, which is totally fine if you have the ability to sell a high value product and build relationships. There's also the possibility to go through retailers. So retailers basically take a much bigger chunk of your revenue. Yeah, in many cases they will take 30%, like Apple or Google take 30%. Kuba, are we still on? Just making sure. Okay, cool. So, and retailers will take a big chunk of your revenue. And this means that there's less money left for your startup, but it also means that you don't have to build a relationship with a customer, and you can create a low-touch product with a small value that a retailer will build the relationship with the customer. It also means that you get a lot less profit. So it's a decision to make. And going forward, you can have distributors. So you have somebody that builds the sales force for you. Again, this means that you are left with even less profit, and it means that you need to manage the distribution network, and you need to manage the people that are in the distribution network. And in many cases, this can be a very, very successful strategy, because if you have a simple solution that everybody can sell, but you don't want to spend time on building relationships with customers, you find people that will do it for you. And finally, the OEMs. So if you are just providing component of a bigger product, so with AI, it's very easy to imagine that you create a component that helps another provider dramatically improve the service to their customer. So you sell your part, your little element, to somebody much bigger. Again, this means that you collect a lot less profit directly from the total solution, but your road to market is much shorter, right? So it's much easier to find those OEM providers. That's it. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hi, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, or good morning.
Product market fit.
GPT-3 is a generative pre-trained transformer.
20% of the full training.
In the next few years, there will be businesses that implement artificial intelligence and businesses that don't exist anymore.
It's the time for you to shine.
Our team focused on the game industry.
So our web application just want to use GPT-3 to scan through the chat, basically summarize some important information.
We created our interactive system inspired by Stephen King.
Our product is a AI-based scene care specialist, and we have named it Dr. Tina.